Hello, everyone. Greeting from Jakarta. It's me, Benny Reddy from the ASEAN Center for Energy, and I'm very happy to welcome you all to the third webinar that we organized this year. Um, Today webinar we are having a discussion on the readiness of the ASEAN on the energy digitalization, and this is brought to you by the ASEAN Center for Energy in collaboration with the SEDA, Sustainable Energy Development Agency of Malaysia. Again, I'm more than happy to welcome all of you in our webinar today. And then first, just introduction. That's myself as Beni Suryadi. That I'm work for the ASEAN Center for Energy as the program for the policy research and analytics. Before we start the discussion on the webinar today, I will brief you a bit on the introduction about our institution, the ASEAN Center for Energy. We are an intergovernmental organization for the region Southeast Asia, representing the interests of the 10 ASEAN countries on the energy sector, and we were under the guideline document, what we call it the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation. This is the guideline document for the energy cooperation in ASEAN as part of ASEAN Economic Community, specifically on the sectoral of energy. ACE as an institution that's being endorsed by the 10 ASEAN member states, we play a role as a think tank and also the catalyst, and also serve as a data and knowledge hub to provide the knowledge depository for the energy development in ASEAN. Every month, we do a regular activity that's be it a policy, the dialogue, capacity building, or joint study. And one of that's what we're having today, the ACE monthly webinar. This is the activity that we organize every month. And then in January, we had our webinar in collaboration with the expert from the International Energy Agency and also from private sector and ADB during that time when we talk about the key energy trend in ASEAN. In February, we are collaborate with the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources of Indonesia to talk about the electrification program in region, where also the expert from Spectrum Myanmar joined with us and then attended quite a number of participants for the dialogue. So we do that regularly every month. It's about 2 to 3 p.m. Jakarta time, or it could be at 3, 4 in Kuala Lumpur. And the objective is to encourage the discussion on energy sector, to bridge the discussion between the policy makers, private sector, academia. It is as part of the multi-stakeholder discussion platform. And today, again, as I mentioned, I'm proudly to present you that this monthly webinar is in collaboration with the Sustainable Energy Development Agency of Malaysia. And then we are going to talk about the ASEAN readiness on the energy era of digitalization. This topic is being discussed by so many policymakers, private sector, and academia today. That's going to be whether that's how it will be giving the impact to energy landscape in ASEAN, but also that's where bringing the question is the ASEAN ready for that? And join with me today for our webinar is first I'd like to present you Dr. Winnie Chen, Chief Corporate Officer of the SEDA Malaysia. Dr. Winnie Chen holds a bachelor degree in computer science from the University of Canterbury, New Zealand, and a master business administration from University Tun Abdul Razak, and a doctor of business administration from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. She has a lot of experience that's going to be as a climate change advocate focusing on sustainable energy strategy to mitigate the climate change and the negative impact. A couple of years ago, she was actively involved in a practitioner dialogue on the climate investment organized by the GIZ Germany, and specifically in 2016, she contributed as an advisor to the working group on implementing climate resilience measures in industry. Dr. Chen will present about to us about the uh, future of blockchain in the electricity market in region. And then joined with Dr. Winnie Chen is also two colleagues from the Power Ledger. We have Mr. Vinod Tiwari as the General Manager, Business Development and Sales of Power Ledger, and also that's Dave Martin, Managing Director for Power Ledger. So where they are trying to talk about the democratization of the electricity. So both speakers will talk about a 15 minutes. Then we will have a Q&A responding to the question from all audience today that could shape the discussion on the ASEAN readiness of era digitalization. And some information background before we talk with the expert. That's going to be last year the ACE launched the fifth ASEAN Energy Outlook with the Philippine Secretary of Energy, where we released our study projecting the landscape of energy development in the region. And then among several key finding that we have in that study that's as part of the ASEAN Energy Conundrum, there is a number of situations that we are facing today and we're still facing in the next 20 or 30 years from now. Like what we have is more than 100 million people in region are living without a grid quality electricity, and more than 80% of energy mix today in ASEAN region is still heavily reliant on the fossil fuels. And of course, it is the commonly know everybody is demand is continuously rising. The projected demand is almost 4% for the next 2 decades. Is definitely higher than the global average, with only around 1%. And also that we see is the increased interest and involvement of the customers, not only as a customer basis, but look into more active participation, and then where the market needs to be adjusted. This is a few things that could be a basis for our discussion today to address, and then we will have from our expert whether the digitalization, the hot topic that's being raised by everybody right now, could provide a solution for the energy situation that ASEAN challenge. And then, but also to follow up question on then one, whether is ASEAN ready for the energy digitalization. For that, we will start the discussion by having Dr. Weni Chen from SEDA Malaysia first to talk. And let's give time to Dr. Winnie Chen. And Dr. Chen, that's will pass to you to start your presentation.
Thank you very much, Benny, for inviting SEDA to be part of this webinar. And to all our listeners out there, greetings from sunny and beautiful Malaysia. Perhaps a very quick introduction to SEDA. SEDA is a statutory body established under the Ministry of Energy, Green Technology and Water, Malaysia. And SEDA has been established since the year 2011. And our core functions are to spearhead energy transition in the country. So specifically, SEDA is an implementer of the feed-in tariff and the net energy metering schemes. And we also implement some other energy efficiency programs. So my topic for this seminar is the role of blockchain in the future of electricity market. Now in SEDA, we believe that the future of energy is framed by the 6Ds. And here you can see that the future of energy, we should really address the issue of climate change and a national energy security. Specifically, the future of energy, we believe it should be decentralized, distributed, decarbonized, democratized, deregulated, and digitized. Now, each of these 6Ds is a very big topic, and today I'm just going to concentrate on one of them, which is on digitization. Now, interestingly, the attributes of blockchain technology have a close mapping to the future of energy in that it adopts 5 out of the 6Ds. And the only D that the blockchain does not have is the decarbonizing component. So anyway, what is the blockchain anyway? I think it's a good question. Why is the technology any better than incumbent ones? But just to give you a little bit of history, actually, a blockchain is made popular by a founder called Satoshi Nakamoto, who developed the
The,
Bitcoin application.
Dr. Chen, I'm sorry to interrupt that, but we haven't seen your slide first. That
Oh, I see. I'm so sorry. Okay. Can you
yeah,
see my slide
yeah.
now?
Uh,
Oh, I'm so sorry about this. So I'm going to move back quickly. So this is the 6Ds that I was talking about. And then this
right.
is where I was talking about the blockchain having the 5Ds, similar mapping to the 6Ds. And yes, I'm actually down to slide number 4. My apologies about that. So just to give you some quick background about the blockchain, it's actually founded originally by Satoshi Nakamoto, who developed the Bitcoin application,
That
and
that
it's
Dr.
back
Chen,
in
that's
2009.
sorry. Dr. Chen, we still haven't seen that. Can just me restart it again just to make sure that you see this slide. Let me I put it.
Ah, yes, I can see your slide. Yes,
Uh-huh.
can you see my slide?
Not yet. Ah, no, it's right. Okay, okay, great. We can see your slide clearly, Dr. Chen, and you can continue the presentation.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe
Mhm.
just some very quick run through. This is slide number 2 that was talking about the 6Ds, and then how the 5Ds map to the 6Ds of the future of energy. And so I think this is where we are up to here. And I was talking about how Satoshi Nakamoto started the Bitcoin back in the year 2009. So the reason why the Bitcoin was founded was actually to allow financial transactions to bypass intermediaries and to speed up the process of funds transfer. But as to regards to what is blockchain, I think I'll explain it in this particular slide. Are you able to see this slide? Yeah. Okay, this slide shows the conventional versus the blockchain network architecture. Now, in a conventional network architecture, there is a database kept in the central server, and you have all these clients accessing the central server. Okay, and database is actually kept in the central server. So with this kind of architecture, we rely on the central server to authenticate and maintain the integrity and security of the database. So there will be some delay in terms of the clearing time and also some typical transaction fees that's involved. And very usual, you'll find that in banking transactions, if you transfer monies, there will be time for clearing and transaction fee. So now in a blockchain network architecture, the database are actually distributed across peer-to-peer nodes. So all these are nodes. So in this case, you can see there are 4 nodes altogether. Okay, so the transactions are actually arranged in a block and they are confirmed by the various nodes in a blockchain network. So meaning to say that there's actually no central authority controlling the validity of these transactions in a block. So for a new block to be accepted by the nodes, there is what they call, there is a consensus mechanism that the block must achieve. And once that block has achieved that consensus, the block is accepted by all the nodes and the new block is appended to the chain of blocks and across all the nodes. So that's how the blockchain technology derives its name. So hacking actually becomes quite difficult because any changes in the data in one of the nodes will actually alert the other peer nodes as the consensus algorithm has been upset, it has been changed. So that's why data in a blockchain is said to be immutable, and in turn, this preserves traceability and also establish some kind of a level of trust in the transactions through this peer-to-peer network. But I would like to quickly introduce to you the concept of smart contracts. Now, the blockchain technology is made useful when we embed smart contracts to the platform. Well, actually, in the simplest form, smart contracts are programs with logic, meaning a whole bunch of the if-then-else statements coupled with some Boolean operators. Say, for example, an electricity consumer wants to submit a bid in a peer-to-peer energy trading platform for an electricity rate of let's say not more than 35 cents per kilowatt hour, and the source of electricity must be from renewables. So if these conditions are met, then the bidder gets his electricity at the terms that he stipulated. And of course, smart contracts doesn't mean that it's only for blockchain technology, but it's just that if it's coupled with blockchain technology, the smart contracts can be more secure than the traditional contracts. And because of the nature of the blockchain, the transaction cost associated with contracting is reduced, and the decision executed is immutable. So, okay, let's go through a few applications of blockchain in the electricity sector. I think the most popular application I've observed that is getting much traction today is the use of blockchain in a peer-to-peer energy trading platform. So the peer-to-peer energy trading platform allows any generator of electricity, and in this case, you can see here the house with a solar panel. So this owner can actually leverage on an existing grid network, or it can be also on a microgrid. So this particular owner can put up a bid for his solar electricity and then sell his solar electricity to a peer customer, which could be his neighbor, and he could sell it at a rate that is competitive with the retail electricity rate. Now, this particular trading platform is helpful, especially when the grid operator is only willing to buy the excess electricity from this owner at some very low rate. And using the energy trading platform, the owner can actually get a better return, and in return, the consumer also get quite a competitive rate. Now, at this juncture, I must acknowledge that the solar owner here needs to pay a token fee to the grid operator to actually cover for the cost of maintaining the grid. Yeah. Okay, the second example of the use of blockchain is in the management of a localized demand response by a grid operator, or sometimes it's called the DSO. So in a situation whereby the electricity demand is very high, the DSO can actually call for a bid for localized demand response. And in this example, you can see that 3 bids are submitted to the DSO. Here you can see a residential owner here submitting his demand response. He's willing to turn off his aircon at 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Then there is another, the commercial building, who says that he's willing to turn off the lights at 35 cents per kilowatt hour. And an industrial customer here that says that he's able to generate electricity at 45 cents per kilowatt hour. So then the DSO might say that, okay, I'm willing to give this bid the lowest, which is the consumer customer. So the last example of application of blockchain technology is the sale of electricity leveraging on this location-based pricing. Now, a typical electricity tariff will cover the cost of generation, transmission, and distribution. But when electricity is generated at distribution level and sell peer-to-peer, say to your neighbor, this actually cuts down the cost as the distance between the producer and the consumer is very close. Yeah, say it's between you and your neighbor. So this lowers down the cost of electricity that is being traded. Now, I know this particular slide looks really very busy, but what this chart is trying to show is that these are the possible applications of blockchain in the electricity sector across the value chain, across the markets, the transmission, the distribution, and the customer sectors. So with regards to the market, blockchain can be used to support community peer-to-peer, as well as the carbon market, and also market-based demand response, which I've shared just now in the example. And peer-to-peer settlement is not just limited to the distribution level. You can also settle it at the transmission level. And blockchain technology can also support real-time switching of suppliers and dynamic tariffs for customers. Now, the use of blockchain technology, I think anywhere else around the world is still very much in an infancy stage. And I'm very pleased to inform that at the end of last year, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, he announced the forming of the National Regulatory Sandbox. And the purpose of this sandbox is to allow emerging and innovative technologies to trial in a live environment minus the regulatory constraints. Yeah. So the sandbox actually is supposed to have a trial period of 9 months. And at the end of this 9 months exercise, then those that take part in the sandbox, they need to submit a report to the National Regulatory Sandbox Council to propose on changes to the regulations so that their innovative technologies can run in live environment. So I'm very pleased to inform that SEDA has taken this opportunity to submit an application to this National Regulatory Sandbox to allow us to test run a peer-to-peer energy trading platform to allow solar producers to sell their excess electricity to any consumers who are willing to buy it. And the rationale behind this is the rate should be competitive with the retail rate, but the owner can also sell the electricity. The producer can also sell it at the electricity at a better rate than what the DSO is willing to buy. So all this exercise at the end of the day is intended to promote solar PV market domestically by hopefully designing a business model that makes the investment in the PV systems more commercially viable. So right, I'm almost at the end of my presentation, but before I hand over my time to Benny, I'm just going to do some marketing talk here. SEDA is organizing our 4th International Sustainable Energy Summit. And we're going to have the summit next month, 10 to 11 of April in Kuching, Sarawak. And at this juncture, we would really like to thank ASUS for kindly endorsing our summit. And we also welcome engineer Dr. Sanjayan, who is the executive director of ASUS. He will be speaking in our summit. So this particular summit, we receive a lot of industry support, and such as from the Malaysian Photovoltaic Industry Association. And altogether, we have around 80 speakers, mostly from international. And if you need more information, you can always visit our website at www.ices.gov.my. But importantly, the discussion with regards to digitizing and also blockchain technology in the future energy market is we should not end it in today's 1-hour webinar. And in this particular summit that is to come under Deep Dive 6, we're going to have a dedicated session for blockchain discussion with 5 other blockchain experts. And we would really like to welcome you to join us. All in all, we have 10 deep dives and 3 plenary sessions. We are anticipating about 700 people. Yeah, and the Sarawak state government is actually co-hosting with us, and they will be actually having a state dinner hosted by the chief minister. So I have, oh, by the way, there is a WOVA application here. Once you have registered, please remember to download a WOVA from your Play Store, and then you can actually connect with all the other attendees in this particular summit through this application. Yeah. So I think that's all I have to present for now, and thank you for listening. Later on, we will have more questions in the later session. So I'd like to hand the time back to Benny. Thank you, Benny.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen. That's a very interesting presentation. You're talking about a sandbox. I think this is the first kind of in region. And again, that's going to be, there will be a deep dive workshop, more discussion about blockchain that you just share, and the sandbox application you just mentioned. That's during the International Sustainable Energy Summit this April in Sarawak. So we have a lot of great panelists there. That's gonna be you yourself will be moderating that. It's gonna be, and then we will also one of the speaker is Mr. Pinot from the Power Ledgers. That will be very interesting. That's gonna be. But before everybody join in Sarawak, that's gonna be. I'm pleased to invite our second speaker. It's Mr. Pinot itself, and also Dave from the Power Ledger, and again, I would like to invite Dave and Pinot to continue with your presentation, please.
Thanks, Benny, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I should give a very quick introduction. Power Ledger was formed in May 2016 to resolve the questions that, a lot of the questions that Dr. Chen posed in her presentation around the decentralization of the energy industry and the increased complexity of transactions that are occurring in the energy market at the moment. I'd like to say, though, that I think as we go through our Power Ledger presentation, we should be able to show that the 6th D, decarbonisation, is also very firmly one of the things that can be achieved through the blockchain technology. So what we want to run through today, and I'll go through the first part of the presentation, and Vinod will take through the second part, is what is the blockchain. I'll touch on that very lightly since Dr. Chen did such a fantastic job through her presentation. Where did it come from, and why do we need it? So, you know, Power Ledger is very much an energy company. We use the blockchain as a tool, as a transactive tool to support the development of transactive energy, and many people will say that the blockchain is, you know, the panacea of all things. It will resolve world peace and all sorts of things. But to be honest, the blockchain is a fantastic tool for very complex transactive environments. And so in this case, we see that the solution itself is really the creation of a transactive platform across electricity networks, turning distribution networks into trading platforms, or embedded networks and microgrids into trading platforms, to allow the economic incentive that's required for the development of distributed renewable generation. But I'll come back to the beginning around why we see the need for blockchain, why we see the need for peer-to-peer energy trading. The slide in front of you there will be familiar to everybody. It's the traditional linear view of the electricity industry, with large-scale generation on the left-hand side and consumers on the right-hand side, joined by long transmission and distribution markets. That's how the existing market has formed, and it's how the market frameworks and the governance frameworks have been set up to support the energy supply paradigm. But all that has changed. So in Western Australia at the moment, 1 in 4 households has distributed solar panels on their roofs. In South Australia, 1 in 3, and those numbers keep rising. And the problem with treating what has become very much a distributed energy system as though it were still a linear one is that the governance frameworks don't support it. We have a limited ability to control the system, because consumers now are at the heart of energy system planning with installing of power systems. In Australia, over the last 5 years, there's been more new generation installed on consumer rooftops than there has been installed on transmission systems. The existing framework, taking a large-scale system view of the energy system, almost requires us to maintain a level of large-scale spinning generation. So typically coal-fired plant or large gas-fired plant, to maintain system stability and frequency. And that's leading, obviously, to a continued increase in carbon emissions, carbon intensity. If we look at the energy system as a series of distributed markets, then there's the opportunity to move to a completely renewable energy system far more quickly, rather than relying on centralised heavy plant to provide system inertia. When we look to distribution markets as well, we get the chance to provide greater access to consumers who presently don't have access to renewable electricity supplies, rather than building and extending existing networks, which is very expensive, time-consuming, and adds to the carbon intensity of national energy supplies. The ability to create renewable distributed microgrids allows consumers who currently don't have access to energy supplies to get access to clean, green, and importantly, low-cost energy. And the last point there is around cost. Dr. Chen touched on this with one of her slides, that relying on large, expensive transmission and distribution systems adds a measure of cost to the supply of energy that can be overcome when we use distributed microgrids. So what's the solution to the problem? The solution really is looking at the energy system now, rather than as a large single system, as a series of interconnected and dynamic microgrids, looking at the consumer as though the consumer were the center of the system, and providing an economic framework that incentivizes the installation or the continued installation of distributed renewables and other assets like electric vehicles, microgrids, commercial-sized distributed renewable systems, and privately owned renewable systems. All of that provides a distributed system that is inherently resilient in the face of things like increasing climate impacts. If you don't have long distribution and transmission systems exposed to high winds, then you have a far more resilient power system where the generation is co-located with the consumer. It's potentially low cost because we're avoiding those large costs of transmission and distribution costs. We're avoiding market costs, and through a direct peer-to-peer relationship, also avoiding market costs and retail margins. It's inherently low carbon because when we're dealing with small-scale systems and distributed dynamic microgrid type systems, we can get them to 100% renewable and rely on power electronics to manage system quality and control and things like frequency, whereas previously we've always had to rely on large spinning machines providing system inertia. And a system like this can be controlled by the customer. As demand increases, consumers can contribute to the provision of baseload plant through the installation of low cost and small scale solar and energy storage technologies. And the mechanism to make that all work is the blockchain. So the solution itself is the development of a trading platform, but the tool that provides that platform is the blockchain, because the blockchain provides an immutable record of energy transactions and can be used to provide a trustless environment where very complex transactive arrangements between multiple consumers in short periods of time can be managed, can be recorded, and because of their immutability can be allowed to contain also a financial transaction, not just the physical. And the mechanism, the business model, sorry, if we go back one slide, sorry, is to allow consumers to monetize their excess electricity or their ability to contribute energy or contribute megawatts into the system. So in real time, if the system is recording all of the inputs to the energy system, through reading all of the meters all of the time, a price can be determined for electricity provision at a point in time, and consumers can transact directly with each other, improving their economic position and deriving an improved return from the installation of distributed renewables, thereby creating an increased incentive for the ongoing penetration or the increased penetration of distributed renewables in the system. PowerLedger does this through a dual platform, as a dual token platform. So as Dr. Chen mentioned, she mentioned the Bitcoin, a cryptocurrency. PowerLedger uses a cryptographic token called a Spark, which is not a currency, just a cryptographic token that has no value outside of the trading environment, to allow consumers to represent the value of energy, to allow consumers to trade energy and trade the value of that energy in real time. So in a closed loop environment, consumers can prepay their electricity, and in return for prepayment, they get access to a series of Sparks tokens. The Sparks token is pegged to the value of the lowest denomination of the local currency. So if in Australia I want to buy $100 worth of electricity, I buy $100 worth of Sparks. I have 10,000 Sparks in my wallet, and as I consume kilowatt hours that are produced by my next door neighbour, as a kilowatt hour leaves my neighbour's meter and arrives at my power meter, then a series of Sparks representing cents per kilowatt hour goes from my online wallet to my neighbour's online wallet, and my neighbour can then redeem those sparks from the cash that I used to buy them in the first place. So it's a closed loop environment. Consumers are not exposed to a cryptographic currency. They're not exposed to the volatility of the crypto market, and because of that closed loop environment where no value leaks from the system, banks are prepared to support that environment as well. So at the moment we have 2 banks that allow consumers to prepay their electricity in the same way that they would prepay their mobile phone and buy mobile phone minutes. They buy Sparks tokens, which are the equivalent of cents per kilowatt hour, and as they consume energy through the platform, they pay for it in real time. Cryptographic token though, so a cryptographic currency is required to gain access to the platform. So the bottom of the screen there represents the customer layer. Providing a support in that layer or providing access to that layer is what we call an application host, which may be an electricity network, an apartment building manager, a microgrid manager. They provide access to a pool of sparks for consumers to trade amongst themselves. Now, where do those sparks come from? The pool of sparks is made available to an application host upon the surrendering of a cryptographic currency called a power token. So the cryptocurrency is required to be surrendered to Power Ledger, and as that surrendering occurs, the token is put in escrow, so it's not lost to the application host. It's simply placed in escrow, removed from the circulating market, and that gives access to the software to run the Power Ledger trading platform, gives access to a requisite pool of sparks to create the trading environment itself, and because it's held in escrow, provides a prudential guarantee to cover the value of energy that's being traded, to provide certainty at the customer level that the money that they use to buy energy is covered by a prudential guarantee. So doing it that way, we can maintain a cryptographic currency that allows us to make the Power Ledger platform universally available. And it can be used in any number of jurisdictions, and the translation allows us to take a power token on one side and then give a spark to a particular application host denominated in their local currency to allow a non-volatile and simple transaction for energy at the consumer level. It must be said, in that environment, consumers are probably not even aware that they're using blockchain technology. They wouldn't be aware that there's any involvement in the cryptocurrency. So consumers are really using like any app on their mobile phone, where they simply prepay their electricity and then enjoy access to low cost and low carbon renewable energy. Just move to the next slide, where I'll let Vinod take over from here.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. As Dave mentioned, Power Ledger platform provides near real-time reconciliation and settlement of energy flows by providing blockchain-enabled transactive layer for financial transactions. What this does is this brings forward the value of energy to real time, where prosumers are remunerated instantaneously as transactions happen. So, for example, in peer-to-peer, prosumer to consumer transactions, or Dr. Chen mentioned the demand response product, where excess energy is made available to retailer when wholesale market prices peak during system peak demand intervals. So by providing instantaneous settlement, you incentivize prosumers to be more active participant in energy systems. Power Ledger demonstrated the power of blockchain through its first proof of concept in August 2016 at National Lifestyle Village, which is in a place called Bustleton, just south of Perth, where 10 prosumers with rooftop solar traded energy with 10 consumers. Since then, we've done varied commercial deployments and trials of varied nature. For example, with Vector Energy in New Zealand, where the impetus was on edge of grid support by providing solutions through distributed energy resources, and Power Ledger's peer-to-peer energy trading platform acted as incentive and facilitator for that solution. Another trial that's currently in progress in India with our partners Tech Mahindra at their campus in Pune at a microgrid level, where buildings in their Pune campus are trading. They have rooftop solar and some other distributed resources, energy resources, and they're trading with each other as prosumers to consumers. And with an ultimate application, they're looking to deploy at rural microgrids at nested microgrid level, where villages intend to trade energy with another village. So if one village with microgrid is able to use energy in an efficient way, that they have some excess energy available, they can trade that energy with another village. In this example, blockchain not only enhances and provides low carbon, low cost, resilient energy system, but also contributes to economic development of the village itself. We have commercial deployment for some time now in Fremantle, Perth, at White Gum Valley, where units in apartment are able to trade energy with each other. Besides, the entire apartment building, when it is in excess, can trade with another building at an embedded network level behind the meter. We have another soon to commence trial in Launceston in Tasmania, where one of our partners, Nest Energy, is soon going to conduct trial in front of meter for peer-to-peer transactions involving retailer, network operator, and multiple businesses as consumers and prosumers. I mentioned White Gum Valley project. We also have a shared electric vehicle there, where electric vehicle charging and payment mechanism is also being managed through blockchain. In Thailand, in the middle of the capital city, Bangkok, in urban setting, at gated community complex level, our partner BCPG is preparing for peer-to-peer energy trading trial between school, shopping center, and apartments. So these are some of the projects. Just quickly gave an overview of where we've sort of already either progressed deployment or have commercial customers using PowerLedger's peer-to-peer energy trading platform, and in some cases, commercially deployed and paying us for those services as well. So very quickly from our ICO in August, September 2017, our Power Token community has grown to more than 38,000 members. We have a Telegram group which is super active, I would say, with more than 16,000 members there. PowerLedger itself has received close to 2,500 mentions in various press around the world since our ICO. And what's next then? So next is about more applications, reaching out to more markets and customer acquisition. Just to give you an idea on some of the applications we are currently already working on, which are in various levels of progress: carbon credit trading, renewable energy certificate trading. We will soon be announcing asset germination, which is fractionalized ownership of energy products like energy solar farms or community battery, where blockchain becomes asset register as well as income register for community investors. We're also looking forward to our wholesale electricity market settlement trial very soon. So it is about new energy economy. It is a global platform for global applications, and we are pushing hard to make it available to global community very soon. Thank you very much. This is all from our side in PowerLedger. So I'll hand you over back to you, Benny.
Thank you very much, Dave and Vinod, for your presentation. It's very interesting that you share that how the system mechanism, and also you share some example of the ongoing project that's in several countries. I think it's also, I saw it, Thailand is also already on the maps. There is now we're having a Q&A discussion, and I think I have a significant amount of the question from audience. I randomly select, but I think we go back to Dr. Chen first. That's gonna be this is the discussion on the blockchain that's going to be, and then in your presentation you mentioned about that the government want to introduce the national regulatory sandbox. Why does the government wants to do this? Can you explore to us, Dr. Chen?
Yeah, actually, the primary reason is because a lot of the innovations, they are unable to roll out in the real life environment due to regulatory constraints. So perhaps just to share with you, in Malaysia, our electricity market is still very highly regulated. So if you want to say we want to roll out this peer-to-peer energy trading, it may not be possible under the current regulatory situation. But having the sandbox meant that we can actually trial run this peer-to-peer energy trading platform in a live environment, perhaps of course using only a small amount of samples, but at least it can be, it doesn't have to be, it can be relaxed of the regulatory constraint. But more importantly, at the end of this exercise, we can put forward a list of recommendations, recommendations including regulatory changes and perhaps some of the technical challenges, whatever that we have to yet overcome in order to deploy this in real life. So admittedly, Benny, we haven't done any deployment yet. We are waiting for the outcome of the application, which should be out by next month.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen. That's gonna be so. Just to follow up on that one, that Malaysia is taking the action. The government is taking the plan on this. So, do you think that's is the right moment for ASEAN, the region, beyond Malaysia, the other country in the region, to also embark this latest development, and whether it's the right moment to transform the energy sector in ASEAN through this blockchain?
Yeah, actually, I read with much interest the presentation by Vinod just now when he mentioned about from Thailand. This company, a GLC company called BCPG, that is actually trialing their energy trading platform. So we know also that in Thailand, their electricity market is also yet to be liberalized, but yet they are already trialing this out. So maybe I can throw back the question to Power Ledger, how they can possibly trial run this. Is it also in the sandbox? I do not know. But I also want to share that in the ASEAN region, in Singapore, Singapore is really very aggressive with regards to its blockchain initiatives. And in fact, news just came out recently that Singapore wants to be the global blockchain hub. And Electrify last week just raised a successful ICO, and they are also the only company so far that is running its energy trading platform live in Singapore. So I think slowly among the ASEAN market, it is actually warming up to blockchain. It's just that at the moment we are still very much at the very early cups of it, so we have a lot to learn.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Chen. That I would like to invite Dave or Fina to respond to that one. To add them.
Yeah, sure. One of my co-founders at Power Ledger, Dr. Gemma Green, completed her PhD in disruptive technologies in 2017, and part of her thesis was looking at the development of an alternative governance framework to support the development of consumer-owned utilities, so behind-the-meter environments and regulatory frameworks that could host an embedded network where the consumer was able to trade peer-to-peer energy. Gemma showed that rather than using the typical electricity market governance framework, there are other frameworks that could be adopted that did support peer-to-peer trading, like strata law, community titling, condominium laws, that virtually allowed, in a behind-the-meter scenario, owners of generation and community sort of owners, corporations, to act as utilities in that environment. So in Western Australia, we are currently running a number of projects, commercial projects, where the owners of buildings, apartment buildings, have become virtually a virtual utility, and we use the strata law as the framework for energy provision there. Similar sort of model will be used in Thailand, where in a gated community and embedded network within the main network, that energy trading will be enabled there by BCPG under a slightly different regulatory framework. I think the thing to point out is that regulatory frameworks around the world have followed the development of the physical system. So the topology of the energy system, large-scale generation, large networks, consumers, basically being only buyers of energy, that physical model has shaped the regulatory framework in every jurisdiction. And it's not now that regulators don't like the idea of peer-to-peer trading. It's just that the frameworks at the moment as they exist aren't flexible enough to support it. So we would really applaud the work of the Malaysian government in setting up the sandbox environment. There are a number of governments around the world that are taking similar approaches to understand how the regulatory framework can be adjusted to support trading across the regulated network. But for now, we're concentrating our efforts behind the master meter in embedded networks, microgrids, gated communities, those sorts of things, where the regulatory framework is already more flexible.
Thank you, Dave. Now, Vinod, you want to add more, or is that all good? Okay, that's Dr. Chen. That's we have a lot of questions about the sandbox application. That's going to be a lot of country that's going to be we're receiving the interest from Indonesia is also to learn from the SEDA experience. So everybody is like looking for the SEDA in doing this sandbox. So would you like to tell us a bit more? That's going to be who is the testing partner? That's going to be what is the timeline that SEDA is looking for on this sandbox, and it's going to be. And then I also have a specific question that can we visit SEDA to learn about this sandbox application? That's going to be I have that question from Indonesia and also from Thailand, Dr. Chen.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Perhaps just to clarify that SEDA is not the body that actually set up the sandbox. The sandbox is actually a joint effort under the Ministry of Finance and together with some agencies that is under the Ministry of Finance. So they are the ones that have been tasked to actually set up the sandbox. And of course, the sandbox is not just catering for blockchain. There are other technologies that come in for this particular sandbox. It's just that SEDA is making use of this opportunity that there is this sandbox that is available, the National Regulatory Sandbox. Actually, if you just do a quick Google on the internet, you should be able to find it already. So with regards to the sandbox, the closing application date is actually on the 14th of March, which is 2 days from now. And there is actually a timeline that's given to those that are approved on the sandbox, a total period of 9 months. But you don't have to make use of the 9 months, but the maximum period that's given to you is 9 months to trial out whatever technologies that you want to make it commercially viable in real life. So at the end of this particular during the period of 9 months, you are supposed to be submitting a report every fortnightly to the Ministry of Finance to inform them of your progress. But at the end of the 9 months, importantly, you need to submit a report. You need to table it to their National Regulatory Sandbox Council and a list of recommendations that this council will take up together with the ministries that's concerned. And if they felt that it's justified to change the regulation, then the regulation will be amended accordingly. So perhaps just to clarify that SEDA is not the one that is running the sandbox. SEDA is an applicant to the sandbox. So we will know by next month. The outcome is supposed to come out in a month's time about the success of this application.
Thank you, Dr. Chen. So that's gonna be the information is available for public. That's so everybody having a more interest. Feel free to visit the websites available. Thank you, Dr. Chen. I go back to Dave and Vinod. That's gonna be there is this question: what is the major block that's hindering or stopping democratization of the energy or the power? Especially if you're talking about in the ASEAN region, what is the major block?
Probably the biggest challenge is not technical or regulatory. It's probably cognitive. Electricity has been provided largely the same way for the last 70 years. So we've always had large-scale plant pushing energy to consumers who just bought electricity. The challenge now is to think about that system in completely different terms, thinking about energy not being centralized but being distributed, not being owned by a central authority but being owned by a large number of consumers themselves, thinking of the planning of the system being controlled or managed by consumers rather than by some sort of central planning authority. So thinking differently around how energy is emerging is like thinking now differently around public transport as platforms like Uber and Lyft and other rideshare platforms start to predominate. They need to be kind of woven into the thinking around the provision of transport services more generally. So it's a very similar change. Fundamentally, the changes that do need to occur from a regulatory perspective usually look at network pricing or surround network pricing around the issue of meter data provision and around metering and meter data consumption and ownership as well. So the regulatory framework and the regulatory changes that are required aren't actually all that onerous at all. They probably simply sit around network tariff design and around meter data provision, but they still require some fundamental changes to regulation and to some places into law, and that then will allow peer-to-peer trading to proliferate and provide a really solid incentive for the increased penetration of distributed renewables. Vinod, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I'd probably just add a couple of other bits, Dave. Things like feed-in tariff, net metering. Various jurisdictions have been treating it at different levels. So, at one time Australia had extremely lucrative feed-in tariff, unsustainable for a long period of time. But while it was there was not much impetus or incentive for peer-to-peer energy trading. You could sell all that excess energy back to grid because you were being paid double the price than what you were buying the energy at. So, some markets have moved on from that, but some probably in that stage. So while markets evolve and take up, get to the normalization process, there's an automatics. Well, the markets will get back to the normalcy where trading of decentralization and energy trading at peer-to-peer level become just the norm. And Dave touched upon metering infrastructure. That's probably another aspect. I suppose some markets are probably at a very rudimentary level with just the basic meters. For energy to be settled in real time, settled and reconciled in real time, you do need devices that are able to sort of measure energy in real time. So yeah, there would be some balances that need to be set right, but these are not insurmountable challenges. I think they're just the some fine tuning required for the energy markets and networks across the world.
Thank you.
Benny,
Yes.
sorry, Benny, do you think I can also give some points here about the democratizing of electricity?
Yes, please, Dr. Chen.
Yeah, I think in Malaysia here, we do want to SEDA aspires to scale up our renewable energy in the energy mix. And I think our challenges here is, although we try to moot up greater distributed renewable energy generations, I think there is a concern from the electricity planners about the impact of high variable renewable energy to the grid, especially for solar energy, and also what would be the impact of greater renewable energy to the electricity tariff. So these are just some of the real life challenges or issues that we have to address. And also just to share with your listeners that SEDA has been SEDA has been tasked by our ministry to develop a renewable energy transition roadmap The roadmap should span until the year 2050, and it should actually see how we can scale up renewables, given our commitment to the Paris Agreement, and also to actually address national energy security. Even though in Malaysia, we produce our own oil and gas, but I think the days are, it's not going to be with us forever. And with the climate agenda, there is a serious need to do so. Yeah, thank you, Benny.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen. That's gonna be again. I'm saying it's gonna be. I still have a long list for question, but unfortunately, we only have 1 hour for discussion today. But fortunate that's gonna be will be a deep dive workshop during the ESS 10 to 11 April next month in Kuching, Sarawak. So we will have a more discussion on this one, but before that, before I end it, I close this session, then I would like to invite again our speaker to give you a final key takeaway to close this session. I mean, we don't have we have a limited time for pretty much of for a short one. I start with can I have Dave or Finot first?
Yeah, thanks, Bernie, and thank you for the time. It's been an excellent discussion. I think the only thing I would like to leave you with, your listeners with, is that the energy system has changed. We don't have to look at energy service provision as the basis of a single large system that requires centralized control and large thermal machines to provide system security. If you look at the system as a series of distributed and dynamic microgrids as part of a main grid, we do have the opportunity to make electricity services provision 100% renewable and low cost very, very soon. So this isn't something that we should aspire to achieving over the next 25 or 30 years. This is something that we can make happen over the next 5 to 10 years if we really think differently around the way electricity service provision is provided.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, Benny, that just going back to your question of is ASEAN ready for era of energy digitalization? Very much so. The microgrids are the solution. We talked about more than 100 million customers without reliable power in this region. Countries like Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, all looking at microgrids as possible solution, and microgrids with distributed renewable energy resources will provide for low cost, low carbon, resilient energy systems. So it is a solution, and blockchain will enable that. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Vina. Dr. Chen, can we have your takeaway?
Okay, thanks, Benny. So I think with regards to your question, whether is the ASEAN ready for digitization? Yes, I agree with Vinod that we are ready. And in fact, we should, because it is a cheaper option to return power back to the people. We must remember that we must democratize electricity, and people must be empowered to be able to choose which electricity they want to actually purchase from. But I agree the conversation is not finishing here, and I look forward to see you at our ICES in Kuching next month. And thank you very much, ASUS, for your support and for inviting SEDA to this webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Chen. That's going to be, yes, that's wrap up our discussion this afternoon. I would like to thanks again to Dr. Chen from SEDA, and then Vinod and Dave from Private Ledger. As mentioned before, that's going to be this webinar is jointly organized by ACE with the SEDA Malaysia as one of the promotion activity toward the 4 international sustainable energy 2018 is a knowledge platform renewable energy and energy demand management. It's organized by the Ministry of Energy, Technology and Water, and Sustainable Energy Development Authorities in Malaysia. This is the 4th. Is also if not in that session where we will from our discussion and follow up from our discussion today on the digitalization mentioned by our host, it's yes. There is a link where you can access registration for that. And to close my session, all the information will be posted in our website. So presentation and a video recording of this webinar, and also to question that we still receive from the audience, will be also responded by the speaker and will be posted in our website. So feel free to come back to see the information in our website, www.aseanenergy.org. If you have any information or to provide feedback, please feel free to contact us in this email. That's going to be. And for that, I conclude our discussion in webinar today. Our highest precision. Thank you very much, Dr. Chen. Thank you very much, Vinod, and thank you very much, Dave, for joining us. And thank you very much for all the audience who joined us. Thank you very much, and see you again in the webinar next month. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Thanks, Benny.
Thank you, Benny. Thank you.
There is a noise being left.